Dr. Aiden Vance didn't look like a hero. He wasn't tall, strong, or trained in battle. He didn't carry a weapon, and he had never been in a war. He was a linguist, a man who studied alien languages and spent most of his time in quiet rooms filled with books and audio files. And yet, here he was, stepping off a shuttle on Velfer Prime, wearing a translator's badge and carrying nothing but a datapad. The summit hall was massive, like a cathedral floating in space. Tall glass walls showed stars blinking in the distance, and rows of alien flags hung from the ceiling. This was supposed to be the biggest peace summit in galactic history. The Wraith and the Kalon, two ancient enemies, had finally agreed to talk after centuries of war. Aiden's job? Simply translate, speak their words clearly and stay out of politics. Just don't get in the way, his handler back on Earth had told him. Aiden adjusted his coat and looked around. Reed the warriors stood to the left, tall and shadow-like, with glowing eyes and long cloaks that moved without wind. To the right, the Kalon delegation marched in, their armor polished, their faces calm but watchful. In the center stood the speaking circle, empty for now, but ready for history. He took a deep breath. This was his first time at such a high-level event, and he didn't want to mess it up. He double-checked his language settings. The Retha used 3 tones to express one word. The Kalon spoke in pulses and rhythm, like music. Humans didn't even have the vocal cords for either, but Aiden had studied hard. He could do this. A soft beep came from his earpiece. The Retha leader wanted to greet the Kalon general. Aiden stepped forward to translate the message. But just as he opened his mouth, a sharp sound cracked through the hall. Boom! The floor shook. One of the Retha guards fell, hit by a hidden blast. Smoke filled the room. Alarms wailed. Screams echoed from all sides. Kalon soldiers raised their weapons. Retha pulled blades from their cloaks. Aiden froze. His heart pounded. This wasn't supposed to happen. Get down, someone shouted. Aiden ducked behind a pillar. His hand shook as he tried to send a message to Control, but the signal was dead. He peered through the smoke and saw her. A Kalon officer not running but standing still, her eyes scanning the chaos. She looked straight at him, not with fear but with something else, a decision. Before Aiden could think, she sprinted toward him. Come with me, she said, grabbing his arm. Wait. Ooh. No time. You want to live? Move. And just like that, Aiden Vance, the quiet translator, was pulled into a war he never meant to be part of. But fate had other plans. Aiden's legs barely moved fast enough to keep up. The Kalon officer had a strong grip, dragging him through the smoke-filled hallway like he weighed nothing. Around them, the sound of energy blasts and shouting echoed. The Peace Summit had turned into a war zone in seconds. They ducked into a side corridor lined with glowing panels. It was quieter here, but the tension in the air was heavy. Aiden leaned against the wall, breathing hard. What just happened? He gasped. The Kalon officer didn't answer right away. She pulled a small round device from her belt, pressed a button, and a shield of pale light surrounded them. This will block scanners for a few minutes, she said calmly. Then she turned to him. My name is General Sura Velren. You're the human translator, yes? Aiden nodded slowly. Dr. Aiden Vance, I'm not supposed to be part of whatever this is. Sura gave a sharp look. None of us were. This was a planned attack. Someone wanted the summit to fail, and they don't care how many die. Who? Aiden asked. I don't know yet, she said. But the Rayta won't wait for answers. They'll think we betrayed them. War could restart before the day ends. Aiden's stomach turned. He had come here to help build peace. Now he was stuck between 2 armies ready to destroy each other again. Why did you help me? He asked. Sura hesitated. Because you're not Kalon, you're not Wraith. You're human. You're neutral. And because... She paused. Her eyes softened, just for a second. Because we may need someone who can speak to both sides. If there's still a chance to fix this, it starts with words. Aiden stared at her. This was madness. He was a scholar, not a hero. But the way she said it, the quiet belief in her voice, it made him feel something. Like maybe he could matter more than he ever thought. Suddenly, their shield flashed red. "They'd found us," Sarah said sharply. She pulled Aiden close and led him down a narrow maintenance tunnel. "We have to reach the secondary council chamber. I can get a message to my command, but we need to move fast." As they ran, Aiden noticed things he hadn't before. Sarah wasn't just strong, she was smart. She memorized the halls, ducked cameras, avoided pressure traps. She had planned escape routes without even knowing she'd need them. And yet she kept looking back to make sure he was still with her. They reached a sealed door. Sarah entered a code. The metal slid open slowly, and behind it was something Aiden didn't expect. A dead Reed guard, fresh blood, a missing badge. Sarah stepped in first, gun raised. "We're not alone," she whispered. Aiden felt his pulse race again. Whatever peace he thought he came for, it had shattered. Now survival came first. Aiden stepped carefully into the dimly lit chamber behind Sarah, his eyes flicking nervously between shadows. The dead Reed soldier lay slumped against the wall, his weapon still in his hand. A deep burn mark ran across his chest plate, evidence of a direct hit from close range. Sarah scanned the room with her weapon raised. Her voice was calm but sharp. "Stay close. Someone killed him recently, and whoever it was might still be here." Aiden nodded, trying not to look at the body again. He had never seen a dead person this close before, not in real life. His hands were cold and his chest felt tight, but he forced himself to breathe slowly. The room looked like an old council chamber, unused for years. Dust clung to the walls. A cracked hull loadable flickered in the center. Strange symbols lined the edges, ancient Kalen script mixed with something older. Sarah frowned and knelt beside the table. "These symbols, they're not from any current Kalen dialect." Aiden stepped closer, curiosity breaking through his fear. He adjusted the settings on his datapad and scanned the writing. His eyes widened. "This isn't just Kalen," he whispered. "There's Reed here too. And something else. Something I've only seen in archived ruins." Sarah looked up. "You can read it?" "Not all," Aiden admitted, "but I know enough to see a pattern." He pointed to a line of glyphs. "This says bond of silence broken," a phrase found in both Reeth and Kalen war poetry. And here, it speaks of a third voice, hidden, manipulative. Sarah stood. "A third party? Are you saying someone's been playing both sides?" Aiden nodded slowly. "It's possible. This could be a record of a time when Kalen and Reeth were not enemies, but allies." Sarah stared at the table, then at Aiden. "If that's true, then the war, our history, it's a lie?" "Maybe not all of it," Aiden said. "But maybe it didn't start the way everyone believes." Before they could speak further, a noise came from the corridor. Footsteps. Sarah grabbed Aiden's arm and pulled him behind a storage panel just as two figures entered. They were Kalen soldiers, but something was off. Their armor had no rank, no insignia, mercenaries. The taller one spoke in low Kalen tones. Aiden's ears picked up the words, "Kill the human, take the general alive." Sarah's eyes locked with Aiden's. She whispered, "They're not here to save us." Aiden's breath caught. He felt fear, yes, but also a rising fire inside him. "I'll distract them," he whispered. "You get behind them." Sarah looked surprised. "You're a translator, not a soldier." He gave a nervous smile. "True, but words can be weapons too." He stepped out from behind the panel and raised his hands. "Looking for me," he said in broken Kalen. The mercenaries turned just in time for Sarah to strike. One was down before he could blink. The other tried to fire, but Aiden grabbed a metal bar and swung hard. It connected with a thud. Silence followed. Sarah stood over the fallen bodies. Not bad for a translator. Aiden's hand trembled. "I think I just started understanding war in a whole new language." The corridor outside the council chamber was quiet now, too quiet. Aiden and Sarah stepped over the bodies of the mercenaries, both alert, both changed. Aiden had never hit anyone before. Now he'd helped take down a soldier. His heart still raced, but something inside him had shifted. He was no longer just the man who translated history. He was becoming part of it. "We need to move," Sarah said, checking her wrist scanner. The explosion earlier took down the summit's main grid. That means no security, no backups, and no rules. This place is now a battlefield. Aiden swallowed hard. What about the Wraith? If they think the Colin attacked them, they won't wait for facts. They won't, Sarah agreed. They'll retaliate, which means thousands more will die, unless we find proof of who really caused this. As they moved through the long, damaged hallways of the summit complex, signs of chaos followed them. Burnt walls, collapsed ceilings, bodies. Colin and Wraith lay together side by side. Some still held weapons. Some looked like they tried to help one another before they died. Aiden stopped at one body. A Wraith soldier held a Colin medic in his arms. Both were gone, but their expressions were peaceful, like they had forgiven something at the end. Maybe the fighting wasn't in everyone's heart, Aiden said softly. Sarah nodded. Some of us never wanted war. We were born into it, trained for it, told it was the only way to survive. She touched a mark on the wall, an old Colin symbol for mourning. Aiden looked around. These people deserved better, both sides. They reached a control station at the far end of the hall. Sarah entered a code and the panel lit up. This is an emergency relay. I can access battlefield reports and maybe locate other survivors. Aiden glanced at the feed as it flickered on. Look at that, he said, pointing to a strange sequence on the logs. Sarah leaned closer. That's not a battle code. That's a chant, a war song. Aiden's eyes widened. It's not just a chant, it's a message. It's coded. He pulled up his datapad and ran the rhythm through his translator software. His fingers worked fast. The pattern is too regular. It's deliberate. Someone embedded a phrase inside the beat. A minute later, the result appeared. The truth is beneath the chore of the dead. Sarah frowned. Core of the dead? Aiden looked at the map. A large underground vault lay beneath the summit. It had been used long ago to hold relics from the first Colin-Wraith alliance, before history turned them into enemies. That's where we'll find the truth, he said. Suddenly, the relay beeped, multiple heat signatures heading their way. Sarah grabbed his arm. We need to get to that vault before they find us. If there's any chance to stop another war, it's down there. Aiden looked back at the corridor full of fallen soldiers, then forward toward the unknown. Let's go, he said. I didn't come here to die. I came here to speak, and maybe to change everything. Aiden followed Sarah through a narrow tunnel that led deeper under the summit building. The lights flickered above them, casting long, shaky shadows on the walls. The air was colder here, heavier. Every step echoed like a warning. This place feels like a tomb, Aiden whispered. It was built after the first war between Colin and Wraith, Sarah said. They stored symbols of peace here. And then they locked the door and forgot it ever happened. As they reached the vault's entrance, a thick metal door blocked the path. Aiden ran his fingers across the ancient carvings etched into the surface. They were a mix of languages, Wraith, Colin, and one he didn't recognize. These weren't just enemies, he said. They built this together. Sarah entered a code and placed her hand on a panel. It glowed, scanned her print, and with a deep rumble, the door slid open. Inside, the vault was wide and dark. Rows of stone tablets stood like statues. Murals lined the walls, showing Colin and Wraith standing side by side, fighting not each other, but a third enemy. Aiden walked slowly, his eyes wide. This changes everything. One mural caught his attention. It showed a meeting, not of war, but of peace. He reached out and wiped away dust. Beneath it was a circular symbol split into 3 parts. This is the proof, he said. They had an alliance. There was a third species, one that caused the war between them. Sarah looked at him. If we can show this to both sides, we might stop the war from restarting. Aiden nodded. We need to transmit this. The people deserve the truth. Suddenly, the ground shook violently. Boom! The lights blinked out. The blast had come from above. They'd found us, Sarah said. We need to leave now. Before they could move, part of the ceiling cracked. Debris rained down. A beam struck Aiden's shoulder, throwing him to the ground. Pain shot through his arm. Sarah rushed to him. Aiden. I'm okay, he groaned, trying to sit up. We have to get this out. She helped him stand. Then from her belt, she pulled a small recording device and aimed it at the mural. I'll record. You explain. Aiden nodded, holding his arm. He spoke slowly, carefully, translating the meaning of the symbols, the message in the murals, and what it all meant. His voice trembled but didn't stop. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the chamber, deep, cold, and familiar. You should not have come here. From the shadows, a tall figure stepped forward. A Kallan elder, one of the summit leaders, flanked by 2 guards. You're trying to rewrite history, the elder said. But history was written in blood. Sarah stepped between Aiden and the elder. Then maybe it's time to write it again. In truth. Weapons were drawn. Tension filled the room. Aiden whispered, We have what we need. We just have to get out. Sarah's jaw tightened. Then get ready. And with fire in their eyes, they prepared to face whatever came next. The guards raised their weapons. Aiden's heart pounded in his chest. The chamber was quiet, too quiet. The air was heavy with tension. One wrong move, and everything would end right here. Sarah didn't blink. She stood in front of Aiden, her eyes locked on the elder. You want to kill us? She said calmly. Fine. But that won't stop the truth. This vault holds records. It holds proof. You can't silence that forever. The elder's voice was cold. No one will believe a human and a traitor general. Sarah's fingers slowly moved to her belt. Maybe. But they'll believe their own eyes when they see the murals. And they'll believe their ears when they hear what's coming. A sudden noise echoed through the chamber. A second blast, this one distant. Dust chipped from the ceiling. They're bombarding the summit from orbit, Aiden said, eyes wide. Someone's trying to bury everything. The elder seemed unsure for the first time. His guards looked to him for orders. Sarah acted fast. She threw a small flash charge to the floor. Boom! A burst of light filled the chamber. Run, she shouted. Aiden followed her into the dark passage behind the vault. He couldn't see much, but he trusted her steps. His shoulder ached from the earlier hit, but adrenaline pushed him forward. They ran until they reached a collapsed tunnel. Rubble blocked their path. The walls trembled with each blast from above. We're trapped, Aiden said, breathing hard. Sarah looked around and found a small maintenance shaft half hidden behind broken stones. It's narrow, she said, but it leads to the outer sector. Aiden crawled in first, the metal cold beneath his palms. Behind him, Sarah followed, pushing the data recorder ahead. The shaft was dark, tight, and silent, except for their breathing. I never thought peace would be this hard, Aiden whispered. It always is, Sarah replied. People fight harder to protect lies than to accept truth. When they finally reached the exit hatch, Aiden pushed it open and pulled himself out. A loud siren greeted them. Emergency lights flashed red. Fires burned in the distance. The summit complex was falling apart. But worse, Aiden couldn't hear it. He blinked. His ears rang with silence, total silence. Sarah helped him stand, but when she spoke, her words didn't reach him. He shook his head and pointed to his ears. She understood. She gently took his hand and wrote 2 words on his palm. You're deaf. Aiden stared at her, shocked. He touched his ear. Nothing. No sound. Not even his own voice. Sarah looked into his eyes and signed a message in Kallan handspeak, something Aiden had studied but never thought he'd need. He read her fingers. "We'll fix this. But first, we show the galaxy the truth." Aiden nodded slowly. Though his world had gone silent, his mission had never been louder. The stars above Velfer Prime were hidden behind thick smoke as Aiden and Syrah made their way through the ruined outer sectors of the summit complex. Buildings burned in the distance. Medical drones zipped overhead, scanning for survivors, but there was no one around. The summit was dead. Aiden still couldn't hear anything. The silence was strange, unreal. The world moved, but it felt like watching a dream behind glass. He stayed close to Syrah, watching her lips and reading her signs. "We need help," she signed. "And answers." They followed an old transport tunnel that led toward the Wreath camp, a risky move, but Aiden had no other option. He had learned pieces of the Wreath tongue over the years, enough to understand their ancient songs and stories. If there was any truth left to uncover, it would be among the oldest ones, the keepers of memory. When they reached the edge of the Wreath territory, two tall guards appeared from the shadows. Their armor shimmered in dark blue, and their glowing eyes stared without emotion. Syrah raised her hands unarmed. Aiden stepped forward and signed in a mix of Wreath and universal code. "Peace. Translator. Request access to Memory Circle." The guards didn't answer at first. Then one turned and signaled for them to follow. They were led to a dome made of black stone, glowing softly with Wreath symbols. Inside, it was quiet and cold. In the center stood a circle of old Wreath, keepers of the past, their faces covered in silver threads. Aiden bowed respectfully. He couldn't hear his own voice, but he still spoke with care, moving his lips clearly. "I asked to connect with the ancestral memory. I need truth, not for war, but to save it." One of the elders stepped forward and placed a hand on Aiden's forehead. His touch was cold, electric. Aiden's body froze, his eyes closed. And suddenly, images. Not sound, not words, just flashes of memory. He saw Callan and Wreath together, long ago, building cities, sharing songs, raising children. Then the skies filled with fire. A third race, alien, insect-like, spread lies between them, twisting their trust into hate. War followed. Memory was erased. History rewritten. Aiden gasped and dropped to his knees, blinking rapidly. Syrah rushed to him. His hearing didn't return, but his heart beat loudly in his chest. He had seen the truth, and now others had seen it too. One of the Wreath elders nodded slowly. "Human speaks for peace," he said in a deep voice, which Aiden read from his lips. "We remember now." Syrah helped Aiden up. His hand trembled in hers. "You saw it?" she asked. He nodded and signed back, slowly, carefully. "The war began with lies, but we can end it with truth." Outside, the fires still burned, but now a new flame had been lit, one that could change the galaxy forever. The stars had barely begun to shine again when Aiden and Syrah left the Wreath dome. Their steps were heavy but full of purpose. They carried with them something no one else had: the truth. The memory Aiden had seen wasn't just a vision. It was history, real and raw. The Wreath Keepers had stored it deep in their minds for centuries, but now the truth had been released, and it came with a name: the Ja. They were the ones who started this war. Aiden signed to Syrah as they moved through a broken skybridge, watching the summit burn in the distance. The Ja wanted the Wreath and Callan to fight so they could stay in power. Divide and control. Syrah nodded, her jaw tight. And they're still here, hidden behind false treaties and shadow deals. They reached a hidden communications hub, built into a ridge above the summit ruins. It was an old Callan station, damaged but still able to send a signal. "If we're going to stop the war," Syrah said, "we have to reveal the truth to everyone at once. Not just leaders, the people." Aiden began setting up the broadcast system. His fingers moved slowly across the touchscreen, still shaking, still tired. The memory from the Wreath had changed him. He could still feel the cold of it in his bones, but it had also sharpened his focus. While he worked, Syrah opened a small metal case and pulled out a chip. "This contains intercepted Ja data," she said. Messages, orders, proof they've been watching both sides, manipulating peace talks. Aiden looked at her in surprise. I had my suspicions, she said quietly. That's why I stayed close to the council. That's why they tried to silence me. He placed the chip into the transmitter. The console lit up. A hologram appeared, blurred but forming. It showed a Jaw figure in diplomatic robes speaking to both Colin and Wreath leaders in secret chambers. Deals, threats, bribes. Behind every major decision in the last century, there was a Jaw whisper. Aiden felt anger rise in his chest. They used us like pawns. He turned to the camera and signed a message as Syrah spoke aloud for the broadcast. People of the stars, this is not war. It is manipulation. We were enemies because they wanted us to be. The truth was hidden beneath our feet, and now it must rise. Suddenly, alarms rang. They're jamming the signal, Syrah warned. Jaw agents, they're coming. Aiden hit the command to start the broadcast. Too late, he signed with a grin. It's out. Just then the sky lit up with the thunder of landing crafts. Jaw soldiers in sharp armor began surrounding the hilltop station. Syrah drew her weapon. We hold them off, just long enough. Aiden stood beside her, unarmed but steady. I was just here to translate, he thought as the enemy approached. But now I'd speak for something more.